The Holy Gospel according to Matthew, the 14th chapter.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Jesus made the disciples get into a boat and go on ahead to the other side of the Sea of Galilee while he dismissed the crowds. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. But by this time, the boat, battered by the waves, was far from the land, for the wind was against them. And early in the morning, he came walking toward them on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified, saying, "It is a ghost." And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them and said, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." Peter answered him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." He said, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat, started walking on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he noticed the strong wind, he became frightened and began to sink. He cried out, "Lord, save me." Jesus immediately reached out his hand and caught him, saying to him, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" When they got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
Ask the congregation to be seated. So this story of Jesus and Peter walking on the water is such a good one. It's been a favorite of mine for a long time. And a version of it is found in two of the other Gospels, but it's only in Matthew where Peter walks on the water. And most of us, I think, find it easier to identify with Peter than with Jesus. So it's easier to connect with this story and find ourselves in it. In a seminary class, one student brought up this story, and she shared that every day when she woke her 10-year-old daughter up for school, she said, "You walk on water today." I thought that was beautiful, and I remember hoping that I could be that kind of mother someday. And from time to time, that memory would come into my mind, and I realized that I didn't know what it meant. Did it mean go out there and do the impossible? Did it mean you can do more than you think with God's help? Was it just a way of saying, "I believe in you"? I never said it to our daughters because I never figured that out. Peter tells the being who appears to be a ghost that the way to prove that it's actually Jesus on the water is to command Peter to walk on the water toward him. It is such a strange ask. Wouldn't it have made a lot more sense for Peter to ask Jesus to calm the storm that was threatening all of their lives? But that's not what happens. Peter comes out of the boat when Jesus commands him. He boldly walks on the water until fear takes over and he starts to sink. In an amazing sermon, Barbara Brown Taylor imagines if the story had taken a different turn. What if Peter didn't lose his nerve? What if all of the other disciples in the boat jumped out super confidently and followed Peter? All of them walking on the water, full of faith toward Jesus. Barbara Brown Taylor says that might have been a better story, but not one about us. It wouldn't have been a story that we could relate to, because we waver in our faith all the time. On our good days, we're like Peter. We want to walk toward Jesus in ways that are bold and require a lot of trust in him. But then a big wave comes, a job loss, a betrayal, the death of our child, and we start to sink. How can we have faith? How can we trust that God's got this when the bottom has fallen out? I honestly think this is the pattern of our life of faith. We step out in faith. Fear overtakes us. We cry out for help. Jesus comes and pulls us into a space where we can breathe. It happens not once, but over and over again. Last weekend, our family was away at the third of the 4 weddings that we are going to this summer. It was all of us, including baby Landon and all of his gear. The wedding was in New York, in the Hudson Valley, an incredibly beautiful place in the summer. We were headed to the Jones family farm for lunch and hanging out until our Airbnb was ready when a bell went off and this dire warning flashed on the screen. Pull over safely, 12-volt battery failure. We decided to try to make it to the farm because we were only about a mile away, and it was so much better being there than being by the side of the road. But we later learned that when the 12-volt battery fails, which is the hybrid battery of the car, the steering and the brakes go too. Claire called Volvo and learned that we had to have the car towed to a Volvo dealership, which was a few towns away. The tow truck, which was supposed to come in 45 minutes, doesn't come for over 2 hours because it broke down. Some of us go to the Airbnb and some of us wait for the tow truck. But at this point, we've all missed the wedding ceremony. Claire is diligently trying to arrange rental cars for the next day because the earliest that this car will be fixed is Tuesday. We have free places to stay in New York City and decide that it makes more sense to go there. So we need 2 rental cars because there isn't one that is big enough for all of us and Landon's stuff. Claire makes the arrangements, and at this point, no one except for me is feeling like going to the wedding reception. Paul is still waiting with the car for the tow truck, but I convinced Sarah to come with me, saying something about this is the whole reason we're here, and somebody has to get there for some of it, and so we call an Uber. Donna is our driver. She's very friendly, and we talk the whole way there. At this point, she is halfway to becoming a friend. The reception is in full swing, and there's a fantastic mariachi band that can play all kinds of music. And I'm starting to feel like things are turning around, and we might salvage this day when I realize that I have left my phone in the Uber. I borrow the mother of the bride's phone and try to figure out how to contact Donna, our driver. But everything I need is on my phone. So after a while, Claire and Paul get there, and Claire has the brilliant idea of using our shared location app to find out where my phone is. So we get the address, presumably of Donna's home, and get another Uber to take Paul and me there. And the driver drops us off in seemingly the middle of nowhere, saying, "It's really close to here." It's dark and the numbers on the houses are nowhere near what the address is. So I see a teenage girl sitting on a stoop, and I tell her our situation. And it turns out that we're on the wrong fork of the road. So as she's leading us to the right address, she shares that Donna is the mother of her best friend and that she's known her whole life. So Donna comes out laughing in disbelief, saying to the girl who had knocked on our door, "You don't know what they've been through already." She tells us that she's driving us back to the wedding, not as an Uber driver, just giving us a ride. So we talk in the car, And we arranged for her to pick us up in the morning to drive us to Stewart International Airport, which has 3 flights a day, none of them international, so we can get the rental cars. Next day, when we're riding with Donna to the airport, I explained to her that we're dropping off these rental cars in New York City, and we'll have to figure out how to get back on Tuesday to pick up the Volvo, or whenever it's ready. She says, just to give you another option, I could get your car and drive it to Manhattan. She says she would take a train back and give us a price that is far less than a rental car. And that's what we did. And we wound up actually spending a lot more time with the bride and her family than we would have if the car hadn't broken down. Because there was a cookout on Sunday, and our original plan had been to stay there for an hour because we were going to be rushing to get back to D.C. But at this point, we were in no hurry. So we stayed for 4 hours and had a great time. In terms of life struggles, this was not a massive storm. This was a shower. But seeing the hand of God reaching out to us so clearly in this shower helps me to trust that it is there in much bigger storms, even when I can't see it. Yesterday, I was looking at the Apple News on my phone, and I scrolled down to the For You section, and I've often thought that that would be a great get-to-know-you question. What kind of articles dominate your For You section? I do a pretty good job of keeping on top of the news, and I try not to submerge myself in news that is revealing yet one more way that things are falling apart. I read some commentators on Substack that give me perspective, and I read headlines, and I read a couple of paragraphs, and I skim. But there are other kinds of stories that I read the whole way through. Sometimes I even click on the links in those stories. And so Apple News knows what I like. Most of the stories are about royalty. Mostly the British royal family, but other countries as well. And I've always thought that this came to me genetically through my mother, and I just can't help it. To a lesser degree, I like stories about celebrities, and particularly stories about their faith lives. So into my Apple News feed popped a story along with a great photo about the actor Matthew McConaughey meeting Pope Leo. As I'm reading this article, Matthew McConaughey talks about how he was at a really low point in his life after becoming very famous, and he went to the monastery of Christ of the Desert in New Mexico, the same one that I went to, once as a gift from the congregation after COVID, and once during my sabbatical. I loved it there. And I loved the idea that I had this in common with Matthew McConaughey. It was ridiculously exciting to me. So he shares about a meeting with Brother Christian, and I'm thinking, I know Brother Christian too. Then I got to the important part. This is what Matthew McConaughey shared. I confessed to him for 4 hours. I'm feeling like I'm at the bottom of the earth. I'm bawling, and snot is coming out of my nose. What does he say? The only word he says to me after 4 hours of my confessions, he looks me in the eyes and he goes, "Me too." It's a different picture than the one we had today of Jesus taking Peter by the hand and pulling him into safety in the boat. It's Jesus sinking down, being there with us in the lowest of our lows. That's the fully human Jesus, the one who can say in a way that we can believe, "Me too." It's a primary confession of the church, fully human, fully divine. For me, in my walk of faith, it means the world to me that Jesus, that God, knows the pain I know. I can't really explain why, but it makes it so much easier for me to trust Jesus and to keep trying to follow. The fully divine, fully God part also changes everything for me. Somehow in that place of looking like it's sure that you're drowning and dying, there is the hand of God coming to you, lifting you out. Or maybe it's Jesus in the water with us, pushing us to the surface. What really matters in all of this is not whether we are people of little faith or lots of faith. What matters is how faithful God is to us. What matters is how constantly God is coming toward us in the storms and the chaos of our lives and extending a hand toward us, like the picture on the cover of the bulletin, hovering over the water, reaching into it so that we can grab on. And when we don't have the strength to grab onto the hand that God has extended, God grabs onto us because God is faithful to us. We may not feel God's hand holding on to us. We may not see God. We may be so deep in the water that the darkness of our pain and grief hides the hand of God. But it is there. And when we make it to the surface again, we'll see it. Thanks be to God. Amen.